I'm just going to talk a bit about my own personal experience from my own children. I'm the mother of 6 children, and I'm just going to talk a bit about the experience of, I'm also a traveller mother, and I'm involved in Pavy Point in an education programme, and it's going out to my own community and develop my own skills as I go along. And I'm just going to talk about my 3 eldest children first, and their experiences of a preschool. The preschool that them 3 children attended was on a site, a camp where I lived, and I was reared up on it. And it was a Bernardus preschool bus that used to come on site, and Colette Murray was one of the teachers at the time. So I know Colette a long time. Also there was 2 other travelling women on that bus, and another settled woman working a lot with the children. And at the time I felt that I was happy enough with that service because it was on the site, and if they needed me to go to the bus, I was only a doorstep away. So, and then the children were getting ready to go to primary school. So they left the Bernardus bus and then they went down to primary school. So now I'm just going to talk a bit about my youngest. The other 3 children came after them 3. Their experiences was a bit different from the Bernardus preschool bus, and so was mine. My eldest 2 girls attended a preschool in Pavy Point, a creche in Pavy Point. And at the time I got a course, and it was on a NOW programme, New Opportunities for Women. So I wanted to develop my own skills and go out and do stuff for myself. I didn't want to stay at home all the time looking after children. I wanted to do other stuff. So followed on from that creche, there was traveller staff in that creche, and there was all travelling children, and it was in the building where settled and traveller people worked together. So then again I felt safe that the children were going to be all treated the same, and there wasn't going to be anything negative. And also I knew the travelling women that were running the creche. And Colette was also involved in that at the time. And can I just say that when the time came then to put them into a preschool from the creche, there was, as you know, there's waiting lists in all places, and there was waiting lists in the traveller-only preschools at the time. So I decided that I wanted to keep doing the course that I was doing, and I looked for a mainstream preschool. Now, I went down and I looked for a mainstream preschool, and at the time I looked around a few places, and there was one place that I came across, and the building was quite shabby at the time. But I said to myself, oh, this building, it looks terrible looking. But what made me happy, I forgot completely all about the building when I met the staff at the entrance. It was the supervisor and the manager and the teachers in that I won't name it, I don't think I should. But it was the welcome that the supervisor gave me at the entrance. She made me feel welcome. It was her attitude towards me. And she knew where I was coming from and all this, and that the children were in the traveller creche before this. So it was her attitude at the door that I knew, and went in and looked around this place, that the children were going to be safe and they were going to be looked after. But what I can say, even though she did have a good welcome, other travellers mightn't have the same experience as I did. So following on from that, my sister and my sister-in-law put their children into it. But what I can say is, even though they got ready for primary school, following from that, I didn't see anything visually on travellers in the mainstream preschool. I didn't see any jigsaws where I seen in the traveller only. I didn't see anything to represent their community and where they were coming from. So now my last child ended up in a mainstream creche and into a mainstream preschool. So that was quite different again. So when I brought her to the mainstream creche, what stood to me there was traveller women working for a couple of years on community schemes, CE schemes, in that creche, working with settled women. So I knew the women and I trusted them, and I knew they'd look out for my child and that she wouldn't have felt any different. So that stood to me in that line. So then after a few years, them women, their time was up and they had to move on to something different or something else or whatever, because of funding and different reasons. So then there was settled staff left there. So I built up the relationship with the settled staff. And then my grandchildren now attended that preschool, and it was down to the result of the traveller women in that creche and preschool that they went there. So they were good role models for the community. So word of mouth went around that there was travelling women in there and that they knew all about this place, where these children were going, and the trust was built up. So, and now I see today it's getting quite harder to keep our culture alive, because the grandchildren are down with me every day. I'm living in a house in Finglas. I'm there for the last 12, 13 years. My 2 daughters now are living in apartments. It's quite harder now to keep the culture alive, because just because Johnny's in an apartment or Mary's in an apartment doesn't mean that they're any less of a traveller. So it needs to start in early start. There needs to be something there in traveller history and culture, and all cultures, because there's other different minorities also in. So just don't have one culture just for the travellers, but have it in a way that all children will feel that they're respected and fit in. And I think it's vital that at the beginning, when people are in training, that they get cultural awareness training about other minorities and backgrounds. Because, sorry now, just... So, and as I said, it's getting harder to keep the culture alive because there's so many travellers in standard housing and in apartments. But I'm trying to keep that tradition alive myself, telling the children about my life, because I travelled on the road, I lived in halting sites, I lived in group housing schemes, so I know the traveller way and the traveller life. And I'm trying to keep that alive now, even though my children were young when they went into the standard housing. But I'm trying to keep that history still alive there and with the grandchildren. And I'm telling my daughters, but it's getting harder to do it because there's nothing out there visually. And because of all other legislations and laws that are getting brought in against our community, and you can't travel anymore, it's harder. So it needs to be out there, and it needs to be an early start for trainers and for everybody, and everybody will be learning. And because one of my own children, when I was living on the side of the road, I had one of my own girls, my eldest girl. She was going to primary school, and if you have a child coming to you from primary school at the age of 11 or 12, growing into her teenage years, and a settled child is asking her, well, where do you live? Oh, now this time living on the side of the road with no facilities whatsoever. And she's telling that child in the settled class, oh, well, I live up in a house in such a place. And yet she was living in no house, living on the roadside. So there's something definitely seriously wrong there when you have a child that happening. And also I have experienced my own children going out playing with the settled children. I have no problem with playing with settled children because I have the best of friends. But when you have a child going out, and my youngest daughter and the grandchildren going out and changing their accent and their language, changing, because I myself, I say I have a rough accent, but it's a country accent. I was born in the country, whatever. But sure, that doesn't make no difference. Like, it's my accent. But when you have a child going out and she's playing, and I often heard this myself and looked out the window of the house, and she's talking pure Dublin and in like the settled children, just in order to fit in. And yet, and I know myself, and I often said to her, go out there and be who you are. And you know what I'm saying? But it's harder. She wants to fit in. And now when she comes back into me, I can see her come back into herself again because she feels safe. So there is something there that children have to do this. And I don't think that children should have to be ashamed of who they are, where they are, or they should be able to be proud of who they are in a cultural way. And that's not happening. I don't see it happening. And I'll just say about the mainstream. Now, I know travellers in my area, I don't know if I'm running over time or not, they're using the mainstream service. But there's still a lot of traveller mothers out there that are not using the mainstream service. Now, all the traveller preschools, there's a lot of them, the biggest majority of them are finished now and phased out and gone. And the travelling children have to go mainstream. But there's still a lot of travellers out there that are not using the mainstream because of fear, because of discrimination. I know what discrimination is. I've been there. Other travellers like me have been there. And they're afraid to use these services because they don't know what to expect. And also they're not aware of the free preschool year. So there needs to be a lot more out there, and a lot more information put out there, and work with the traveller organisations to get that information out there, because travellers do not know anything about the preschool free year or what it's about or how to go about it. So there needs to be a lot more involvement, everybody working together. The people that are training, the early start, the organisations, everybody, because that's the only way. So, and I think that's me. And thank you for participating and for listening to my story. And if you have any questions, go ahead and fire away now. I mightn't be the best to answer them, but I'll do my best. Thank you.